Hi, welcome to Make with Steph. I'm Steph and today we're going to be looking at Jelly Gouache. Now if you're following any artists or artwork on social media, particularly things like Instagram and TikTok, you may have seen these jewel pretty paints popping up in people's reels, particularly over the last couple of years, and have had absolutely no idea what they're all about. Now these are called Jelly Gouache. They are a type of gouache paint. Now if you don't know what gouache is, it's quite often described as a mixture between watercolour and acrylic. So it is a water activated paint, and certainly if you add lots and lots of water to it, you can create watercolour like washes, but it has the bonus of an opacity very much like an acrylic, so it's nice and you can lay it on really nice and thick and get it really beautiful opacity. However, it is not waterproof when dry. That's a really important point, whereas acrylic is waterproof when it dries, and it also has an absolutely beautiful matte finish when dry too. It has lots and lots of benefits. Loads and loads of artists are using it. You will quite often see lots of people do kind of Studio Ghibli paint studies with it, and it creates these just absolutely beautiful paintings. It is something that I had never used until recently, but it is now one of my absolute favourite art mediums to use because it is so versatile. You can create incredible blends with it, you can layer it as long as you're careful, and the colours and the vibrancy is just kiss. Now Jelly Gouache is this, and it's slightly different to the designer grade or the artist grade that you might have previously seen or heard of before. Let's have a closer look, shall we? So here is one of my gouache palettes. This is the Himi 24 colour palette, and Himi is generally one of the more popular brands. You can also get Artex, I have a few of those, and there's an enormous Mia palette as well, which I will show you later. But this is one that I quite often see across social media by many artists. If we just open her up, you can see inside. You can generally see which colours I use the most because they're almost run out, but this one is a relatively new 24 colour palette, and you can see all of these absolutely beautiful vibrant colours, which are so inspiring and are just so much fun to paint with. Like I said, I'll show you my massive palette later, which is 56 colours, which is great if you are like me and you absolutely despise mixing up colours. Now they call it Jelly Gouache because they come in this tiny little jelly cup. Adorable, right? I have also heard it called pudding gouache at one point as well. But they come in these tiny little pudding cups. They normally have a little foil wrapper across which you have to peel off, and then you can just pop them back in here. And the way that we use them is the same as we would use any other gouache paints as well. Let me just grab a paintbrush here. So they are water activated, so get your jar of water. Some artists recommend having 2 jars of water, so you have one for washing your brush and one for just clean water when you go to dip it in. But put some water on your brush, pop it into the colour that you are wanting to paint with. You can see it's very kind of buttery. Let me pull that out here so you can have a really good look. You can see it's quite thick, but it's kind of buttery, smooth and soft. There we go. I'm going to pop some just on a piece of watercolour paper. It works really well for this because it is a water-based paint. There we go. So this is a really thick consistency that I've got on at the moment, so you can see that it is kind of coming off a little bit, but if I pop just a little bit more water on, it will spread that much easier. Can you see? I can continue to add layers onto it as much as I want to. It blends really beautifully as well, so if I just clean that off, and let's use this light pink here, so I can pop that on there and just kind of start to blend those colours together. It blends so smoothly and so beautifully. It has been an absolute joy to work with. I hate creating blends. I love the look of blends, but I absolutely hate the work that goes into them. Gouache makes blending just very effortless, and so much easier. It is so lovely to work with. I've created this little colour card for you so you can kind of see the difference between the finishes of watercolour, acrylic and gouache. You can see that gouache just has that more matte finish than the acrylic does. The acrylic, you can kind of see a little bit of shine there. You can see some of the paint markings, whereas gouache has much less of that. It's a much flatter colour, but still really beautifully opaque. But you can also see that we've got kind of a darker element here where I put the paint on much more thickly, and it's lighter here where I've added a bit more water to kind of wash it out. And that's where gouache is great for just being able to really easily control the opacity of the colours and how you want it to appear on your page. Like I said before, the only concern is gouache is not waterproof when dry, and I'm going to show you that now. I've got a wet brush here. This gouache is dry, but if I put my wet paintbrush on it, you can clearly see that it reactivates. It is not waterproof, and that's where you have to be really careful. Whilst it does layer beautifully, you do have to be so careful when you're layering it, because you could so easily reactivate the paint. The other problem is as well, of course, is when you've finished a painting, particularly if you painted on canvas and you want to hang it or protect your painting, you're going to have a problem when it comes to wanting to protect that painting. So if you're wanting to put on any varnish or any coating or a lacquer, you're going to have an issue, because if you put that on there, you're going to find that it reactivates the paint just like this, and you are going to ruin hours and hours and hours of work. I speak from experience. It is heartbreaking. So that is 100% a downside to this. It's much harder to protect. Now, one of the things I've heard lots of artists complain about is that it's a waste of money because it dries out. And I'm going to show you my much neglected Artex 18 colour set to show you what it looks like when it's dried out. So I haven't used this one for a very long time. And you can see that instead of that beautiful kind of pudding consistency, it's all cracked and dried out and hard. Now, lots of people have actually been throwing it away when this has happened, but you know what? This is the beauty of having a water-based paint, because you can revive this. You can bring this back to life into its beautiful puddingy consistency again, with a little bit of effort and some water. Now, depending on how far gone these are, you can either spray it with some water across the top layer, sort of like that, and leave it for a while, or, which is what I'm going to need with these, because these are really far gone, you're going to have to add a little bit more water. So I use a little pipette normally, and some clean water. I have heard some people say you should use distilled water rather than tap water, because it is better. I just use tap water because I don't have distilled water, and I just put a few droplets in each one. And then what I will do, depending on how far gone they are, you can kind of already see the colour reactivating in some cases a little bit already. I will either leave them for maybe an hour or maybe overnight. If I'm going to leave them overnight, I will normally come and give them a stir after a couple of hours, maybe add a smidge more water, and then leave them to sit overnight. And then I will take a palette knife and then just give them a really good stir. You might have to give them a bit of a stab because they're quite solid. Yeah, these are really solid. So I'm going to leave those to sit probably overnight, I would say, and then when I come back in the morning, these will be soft enough for me to stab and stir, and if I just keep stirring, they will actually come back to their original consistency, and then I can continue using them again. Now, I would recommend, if you're going to get palettes like this, the way to avoid this happening is maybe once a month, giving your paints a bit of a spray and just a bit of a stir, just to keep them at that nice consistency. However, my brain is terrible and I'm constantly forgetting to do that, which is why my palettes sometimes end up looking like this. But they do come back to life. So if you've bought these paints and you've thought, oh my god, they're such a waste because they're dried out, they're done, do not throw them away. You can bring them back to life and continue to use them for many, many more art pieces. So now we've had a little look at Jelly Gouache and what makes it special. Why should you choose it amongst all the other brands out there, all the other types of gouache out there? Why should you choose Jelly Gouache? Well, one of the main reasons that people choose it is cost effective. It is relatively cheap in comparison to some of the other brands, and relatively easy to get a hold of depending on where you are in the world. I'm here in England, although I have never seen Jelly Gouache in an actual store. It's very easy for me to order from Amazon, and readily available. I can order it on Amazon and it'll arrive the next day. So it is fairly easy for me to get hold of. I have looked at the Designer's Gouache, which is by Winsor & Newton. We've got a local art store and I actually went and had a look in the, tried to have a look in the January sales for some of that. Honestly, for me, the price 100% puts me off of that. I'm well aware of how high quality it is, and you know, it has a much better pigmentation, a much better opacity. Longevity of that painting as well is going to be much better. If you are an art professional or you're wanting to sell your art, then Designer's Gouache is probably your better bet. However, the cost of a fairly small pack of Winsor & Newton Designer's Gouache was probably only slightly less than this 56 colour Mia Jelly Gouache. And yeah, this very kindly was bought for me by my husband and my daughter for Christmas, and I will use this to death. All of the colours are beautiful, bright, vibrant, amazing. I don't have to spend hours mixing tons of colours. I can mix colours if I want to, but I don't necessarily need to. And every time I look at this palette, I look at it and I'm just instantly inspired. I can look at those colours and think, oh, I want to paint this with that. The Designer Gouache pack only had, I think, 4 or maybe 5 colours. I'd be doing a lot of mixing, which is great, you know, if you want specific tones, but it just wasn't very inspirational, and for the cost, I honestly couldn't justify it for just a few paints. So there is that kind of issue there, but that's where Jelly Gouache kind of shines. It is available there for you at a relatively low price point with tons and tons of colours, a good availability, and still produces really beautiful, incredible paintings. Just remember that it may not be as light fast, it's not archival, so you might find that if you've got Jelly Gouache paintings up on the wall, over time, as the light reacts with them, they may fade. You may see some cracking as well if you have painted really, really thickly onto the page or onto the canvas. So just be aware of that. Also, if you have painted a canvas, you've got a beautiful Jelly Gouache canvas that you've painted, you spent tons of hours on it, you've hung it up on your wall, do remember that it's not protected. It is still activatable years later with water. So if you happen to be walking past that painting with a drink in your hand and you trip over and you spill it on that canvas, that paint's going to run, it's going to blotch, and it's going to be ruined. And you're going to be heartbroken. So just remember that. I haven't yet found anything that you can put over gouache that doesn't ruin it to protect it. You can obviously put things like sticky back plastic on, but then you've got to, you know, the point of having gouache, one of the reasons we have it is because of the matte finish. So if you're going to put sticky back plastic over to protect it, then you're instantly losing one of the reasons that we love it. Because you're going to get shiny, no good. I did see something somewhere about a wax that might protect it and not ruin it when you put it on, but I'm still investigating that. So I will update you when I know anything more about that. You can get student grade acrylic in tubes as well for a relatively reasonable price. So, you know, Jelly Gouache is not the only cost-effective gouache out there on the market. It is honestly though just my favourite, partly because of the beautiful colours, and I just kind of like the little, jelly cups. Like, they're super cute. Look, like, how can you not love these little, they look like little puddings. I don't eat them, don't eat them. They are non-toxic, but don't eat them. But they're just adorable and just really lovely to work with, very accessible. There is also Acrylic gouache, which you might have heard of, which is gouache mixed with an acrylic. So if you have acrylic gouache, it will work just like a regular, like a jelly or a designer's gouache, but has the added benefit of being permanent when it dries, just like acrylic. Excuse the motorbike that's going past. It has that benefit to it, but it still dries with that beautiful matte finish. Acrylic gouache is also quite expensive though, so just have a really good look. There aren't very many brands of acrylic gouache, it's hard to say, acrylic gouache, out there, and they can be quite high price points, so just bear that in mind when you're looking into that as well. But if you're looking for something that gives you great quality, lovely to work with, really cost effective, then I can honestly tell you Jelly Gouache is the way to go. And how can you not look at all of these beautiful colours and not be inspired? Like, just amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on our little investigation of Jelly Gouache. Please let me know in the comments if it's something that you like to use or you're planning on having a go at some point in the future. It is my absolute favourite art medium, but I know everyone vibes with a different medium and feels comfortable with different things. So feel free to let me know what your favourite art medium is in the comments too. You never know, it might be something that I investigate in the future as well. If you like our content or you'd like to see more crafty content, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more art-based and craft-based content in the future. So we're going to be doing some unboxings, we're going to be testing out some new products, we'll be doing some paint-alongs, so you can paint along with me or make along with me in some situations, and I'll also be doing some tutorials as well. So please feel free to continue following us for more content. You can also find me on Instagram at Steffi Walker Art, and on TikTok too. Thank you so much for coming along today, and we'll see you soon. Take care.